What up, everybody, and welcome back to the Wilson Dittman Sports Channel here on YouTube, where we talk about everything related to Nebraska football, whether that's players, whether that's recruiting, whether that's staff, right here on this channel. So if you have liked the content, please hit the like button and maybe even subscribe. But let's get it going. We have our third positional breakdown. We talked about quarterbacks first, second running back, and today we're going to lump together two positions. We're going to talk about wide receiver first, and then we're going to go to the tight ends. So I'm just going to go over all the players, the way the depth chart is going to work, in my opinion, and then we'll gloss over that, and then we'll go to the tight end and how I think that's going to impact the season, how the position is gonna shake out in fall camp, and So let's talk about the receiver room first. Who is going to be wide receiver one? I think really you're going to have wide receiver 1, A, and B, just because they play two completely different positions on the offense. You have Marcus Washington, who's going to be our wide receiver 1 at the X, and then you have Billy Kemp, who's going to be our wide receiver 1 at the slot. Let's get into talking about Marcus Washington first, just because he was here last year. So Marcus Washington transferred from Texas. He was pretty all right there, and he was a wide receiver 2 last year, and he had 31 receptions, and then about 500 yards receiving with only 1 touchdown. But really solid last year, honestly. And there were games at the end of the year where Trey Palmer just wasn't producing. He was kind of off on, defenses really prioritized stopping him, and Marcus Washington came up in a big way. Just really consistent, too. I expect Marcus Washington to be the receiving leader on this team this year. He might not be the leader in catches, but I think yards-wise he will be the leader there, and probably touchdowns as well. 1 touchdown, I did not think he only had 1 touchdown. That's wild. But yeah, Marcus Washington, really solid player. 6'2", about 200 pounds. This is his last year of eligibility. So he's playing for a spot in the NFL. I like him, man. I really like him. I was a huge Marcus Washington defender last year. I thought there were a lot of games he outplayed Trey Palmer. This is a guy who could make the NFL for us. But yeah, there's no movement there. He's going to be wide receiver X. Nothing really to debate with Marcus Washington. Is a solid player. He's not going to be first team All Big Ten. He's not going to be second team All Big Ten, but he's just going to be solid. My prediction is he ends the year around 800 receiving yards with about, I want to say, I'll say about 50 receptions, maybe about 5 touchdowns. So somewhere around there. Then let's get to Billy Kemp, who's going to be our wide receiver 1 in the slot. Now, his career, man, has been all over the place. Really liked watching him a couple years ago at UVA when he was a junior. So, or I guess he might have been a redshirt sophomore. COVID eligibility messes it all up. But he had 70 receptions that year, 700 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Then last year he got injured. He only had 16 receptions and about 100 yards. But this is a guy who we talked about when he committed. He's a Swiss Army knife. I compare him to Wan'Dale Robinson. This is a guy who can line up in the backfield for us. He can be in the slot. He can do all those jet sweeps. He can even be in the option for us. I mean, this is a guy who can be everything for this offense. I really like him. He's about, he's a short receiver, 5'9", 180. But, he's a thicker built receiver. Being as short as he is, a lot of times you see guys who are 5'9". They're not usually 180. But, yeah, he's pretty big, pretty muscular for being as short as he is. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy who, if he's healthy, and I haven't heard any health concerns so far as when he's been in Nebraska uniform, he's going to be a producer for us. I expect him to kind of have a Wan'Dale Robinson type stat line this year, about 600 yards receiving, maybe 200 yards rushing, maybe a little lower probably. I don't think they're going to completely utilize him running the ball like we did with Wan'Dale. Maybe about 100 yards rushing. But, this is a guy who they really liked. The second he entered the portal, they contacted him. And somebody who, we're not debating this. He is slot receiver number 1. But after him, after Marcus Washington, after Billy Kemp, there's a lot of discussion about who's going to be wide receiver 3, who's going to be getting playing time. But I really like this, man. I really like Billy Kemp. Again, he's another senior. He's fighting for a spot in the NFL. This is his last year of eligibility. Something to watch there. I'm just hoping those 1-2 is one. I hope that 1-2 is one of the best in the Big Ten. Between Billy Kemp and Marcus Washington. So, again, those are guys that are proven commodities. Billy Kemp obviously not really a proven commodity in a Nebraska uniform, but They're both proven commodities. I don't really want to go too much in depth about them. But let's get into who I think will be wide receiver 3. Now, there's a couple guys up for this. All right, you have Xavier Betts. That's number 1. You have Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, who is coming back after entering the portal, and then he came back. You have Joshua Fleeks, the transfer from Baylor, and then that's it. That's basically it. Really, if you're looking at this wide receiver room, there's only 5 players who aren't true freshmen. And then after that, it's all true freshmen. So I think wide receiver 3 will end up be Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. I really like him. I liked him a lot when he played Northwestern. I was frustrated with what happened last year. Basically, the whole situation was he was frustrated with playing time, and when Frost was fired, he said he's out. He entered the portal about a week or 2 later. He came back. I think Rule just kind of convinced him to come back. And I bet he didn't like what he was seeing in the transfer portal in regards to teams offering him. So I think it was kind of a win-win. Isaiah Castaneda he's a stud. Again, he had the first touchdown of the year. He had a really nice catch over a Northwestern defender, 50-50 ball in the end zone. I really believe in him. I really liked him last year when we got him. He's 6 foot tall, 190. He has 2 more years of eligibility. He started his career at New Mexico State. And again, last year, he only had 5 receptions for us, but he had 120 yards in those 5 receptions. So 2 pretty big chunk plays, if you remember those. He had a field day against Northwestern specifically. But earlier in his career, when he was at New Mexico State, he had 40 receptions for about 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. So this is a guy who, he's never really been proven to be wide receiver 1. That's not what we're asking him to be. But I really like him in this role. I just hope, I like his character too. I still, the whole thing in him falling out with Frost kind of made no sense to me, and them not playing him. And then when Frost left, he left because I just got so many mixed signals. And what was weird was that his family was in Lincoln like the week before he transferred, and then they said, "Oh, he's not transferring," and then he transferred the week later. The whole thing was odd. And I've never seen a player enter the portal that early in the season before. And then he came back. But I really like him. Him being wide receiver 3, playing at the Z position for us, that's not really saying a lot, though, because the next 2 options aren't great either. Let's get into Xavier Betts. Now, Xavier Betts is a guy I'm notoriously low on. Xavier Betts is a talent, man. He is a freaking talent. I agree. Okay. I really liked him when he played for Bell West. I thought he was one of the best recruits to ever come out of the state of Nebraska, period. He didn't receive that many scholarship offers, obviously, because of academic problems, among other things. I think he ended with like 5 scholarship offers, period. He came here, and really, he just struggled getting in the classroom. He struggled academically completely, and he struggled learning the playbook. And the whole thing was a mess. And we had to hold his hand, and it didn't work out, and he left. He left school completely. He left UNL. He was working at Walmart in Bellevue for a time. He was working as an Uber driver. There was crazy. And I think he had a drug charge in Iowa. So, this dude's life was on a complete downward spiral. It was sad to see. He was working at Walmart. He was being trained. It was ridiculous. And then when Rule came, just like that, boom, there was rumors he would come back, and he did. I didn't like it when he came back because I'm not disputing his talent. I've never disputed Xavier Betts' talent. I'm always worried about his commitment. And Xavier Betts is going to be a redshirt sophomore, junior, right? We can't afford to hold this guy's hand any longer. We can't. So that's what worried me, right? I don't want to hold this guy's hand academically. I don't want to hold this guy's hand learning the playbook because that's what brought him down last time. As for how good of a receiver he is, he's insane. He's 6'2", about 200 pounds. He was so good that Frost understood that he had no idea. He could not comprehend the playbook, but he would put in special plays just to give Xavier Betts the ball. You remember all those jet sweeps we had going on? Those were specially put in the playbook for Xavier Betts to use. I still remember that run he had against Penn State in 2020. Dude took like a 70-yard jet sweep to the house. That's how good of a receiver Xavier Betts is. It's just about him learning the playbook. And I don't want to do that whole game again where where we have to worry about him just learning the intangibles. But as for talent, man, it's all there. It's all there. So that's why I don't want to put him at wide receiver 3. I don't think he'll end up getting wide receiver 3. I still think that the things he struggled with the first time, he's still going to struggle with. But hopefully with mentorship and all that, it ends up working out better. And the next guy who is going to be wide receiver 5, I guess, is Josh Fleeks, guy from Baylor. I hated this game. I'm not even going to lie. This was the worst transfer edition we've ever had, man. This was so bad. Okay, this is a guy who has been at Baylor for 5 years. I think he's like 23 years old, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. And, I mean, you look at his career total. This guy hasn't even eclipsed 100 yards receiving in his entire career. Oh, no, excuse me. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I better be looking at the wrong thing. He's had. So basically, the way Baylor used him was kind of as a flex running back, wide receiver, things that you hear rules saying that all the time. But I mean, you look at his stats, and his career really kind of took a downward spiral. 2019, about 250 yards, 25 receptions. Last year, he only had 2 receptions for 50 yards. In 2021, he had 7 receptions for 90 yards. In 2020, he had 20 receptions for 200 yards. Like, it just keeps, it keeps getting worse. And we took him on scholarship. Like, I think this was purely a Josh Fleeks kind of wants to be coaching. That, like, nobody's grasped that. I think Josh Fleeks and Matt Rule kind of have an agreement where it's like, hey, and this, you see this all the time. You see this even with Nebraska volleyball. Nicolin Hames did this. But Josh Fleeks is going to be here for a year. He's going to be a leader. He's basically going to be a coach on the team. And then after this year, he's going to be a grad assistant. I can almost guarantee you that's what's going to happen with Josh Fleeks. Can almost guarantee, because when he came here, Rule kept on talking about how much of a leader he is and how much of a good presence in the locker room. This guy's going to be a grad assistant next year. But I just don't understand why we took him on scholarship. That was the only thing I was frustrated about, because this guy provides almost nothing to us at this point in his career. But he's going to be wide receiver 5, I guess. So maybe he makes a little renaissance in his career. So, yeah, that's wide receiver 5. And after that, man, this wide receiver room goes downhill. I mean, real bad. Everybody else is true freshmen, right? And let's just run through true freshmen. Malachi Coleman, Jeremiah Charles, Demetrius Bell, Jalen Lloyd, and Jaden Dawson. And Bryce Turner. So I guess we have 6. That's nuts. That's nuts to me, though. We have 6 true freshman wide receivers. Because Sean Hardy entered the portal recently. There's a couple others who did too. So yeah, let's just kind of run through who I think is going to play this year. Malachi Coleman's the big one you're going to hear, man. He's the big one. And I know a lot of you guys might even be expecting him to play. 6'4", 190, from Lincoln East, from Lincoln. I mean, dude's kind of a celebrity. Yeah, he's not going to play this year. And I've been outspoken about Malachi Coleman. Malachi Coleman's he's really similar to Xavier Betts. I'm gonna compare him straight to Xavier Betts, because they're both incredible talents, but they're both guys who need to sit and develop. And Malachi Coleman, there was a lot of stuff when I watched him last year at Lincoln East. He was a raw talent, man. He was a raw talent, and you saw it all the time. But he wasn't the receiving leader on his own team at Lincoln East. Like that shows you something. Like, he wasn't even the best receiver on his own team. And you might say, oh, they prioritized him, they double covered him. Yes, that's very true. But, good players make things happen, right? Like, we see that all the time. Xavier Betts, when he was playing for Bellevue West, he was being double covered, and he put up 1,000 yards, Malachi Coleman, I think only had like 500 yards this year. Like, that's ridiculous from a top 100 recruit. And I'm not trying to hate on Malachi Coleman, man. I'm not a Malachi Coleman hater. I like him. I think he's a good player. But he's a developmental player. He really is. He is not going to, come out here and play as a true freshman and go off for 340 yards and look really good going into his sophomore campaign. Like, that's not happening. He's a guy who needs to sit back, he needs to develop, needs to learn the playbook, because he could struggle if he doesn't. And I really like him. The talent's there, but there was a lot of things I saw with Lincoln East that was disappointing this year. And good players make it happen. We can sit here and make excuses for Malachi Coleman all day long. that he was being double covered. But at the end of the day, in the state of Nebraska, you're being double covered by, two white DBs who aren't playing, football at the next level, right? Like, that's just the way it is. Malachi Coleman, if he was ready to play, he would have put up 1,000 yards last year. And there was a lot of his stuff where he struggled with, just with route running, just with effort. I announced for Millard South, and there was a couple plays where he had a fumble against Millard South, and he did not go for the ball when he fumbled the ball. He just straight up fumbled it. Like, he dropped the ball, and he didn't go for it. He was just kind of pouting. And I'm not hating on Malachi Coleman. I'm not. I'm just saying he's not ready. Maybe there's even an attitude thing there, but he kind of needs to sit back, develop, and get ready to go because he's going to be a talent for us. But, yeah, he's not a guy I expect to play this year at all. And if he does, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he is a stud, man. But, yeah, that's who I think will not play. Like, I think Malachi Coleman's actually the least likely to play as a true freshman. I also think Jeremiah Charles and Jaden Doss are really unlikely, just kind of for the same reason they're really raw. Now, as for the most likely, Jalen Lloyd, I think, is. Specifically as a return man, I think we could play Jalen Lloyd as a true freshman. He's the fastest guy on this team, track athlete. This dude is, like, by the time he's a senior in high school, or senior in college, he'll run about a 4.2. I mean, that's how talented this dude is. So I think Jalen Lloyd could. And then Demetrius Bell, who is my favorite get in this class, 4 wide receiver, 6'2", 190. This guy's a stud, dude. 4-star. A lot of people have this guy under the radar a little bit. But this dude, I mean, some people who know Tennessee high school football just kept raving about this guy on Twitter. I mean, he is somebody who we're going to have to look out for a lot. Look at his little bio on Husker.com. He got 100 yards all-purpose. He had 1,000 all-purpose yards with 8 touchdowns receiving and 2 rushing. He also passed the football too. He played quarterback, and he was, I think, in the state championship game for them. And he also played basketball. So, I mean, this guy can do everything for us. And he's being recruited all over the nation. He had offers from Alabama and Georgia. So I really think he could also play for us this year. And the positional flex is something we'll have to watch out for. But yeah, but really, realistically, none of those guys are going to play as true freshmen. We're kind of in a bad position depth-wise. But, yeah. Oh, I think I forgot about one. I forgot about Bryce Turner. Yeah, Bryce Turner won't play either as a true freshman. Yeah, so that's the receiver room. Overall, I've been grading the rooms. Overall, I mean, it's a C. It really is. I think the top 2 guys are really good with Billy Kemp and Marcus Washington. I think it's actually a really good room, like comparatively to other teams in the Big Ten. But the depth, man, if Marcus Washington goes down or Billy Kemp goes down at any point in the season, we're screwed. And you could say the same thing about the quarterback room. You could say the same thing about the running back room. It's just young. And that's fine. I'm not dogging Rule for not having depth in the receiver room. It's not his fault. He's doing his best. Because, I mean, he has 6 true freshmen in that room, right? We're not going to have this problem in future years. So, but as for right now, it's a C. If IGC stands up, right? Garcia Castaneda, he stands up, make this room a lot better. I think it could be a B. I'm just worried. Xavier Betts is a wild card. IGC is a wild card. Fleeks is a wild card. I know I hated him a little bit. I'm not a hater, man. I like to be realistic. And, when I see guys who just haven't produced, especially in the last 3 years, it's worrisome. And then all the true freshmen, I don't think will play at all. But if they do, that'd be kind of something to watch. So, yeah, overall it's a C. Not going to knock your socks off. Not one of the best units on this team. Let's get the tight end, though. This is a 2-part episode. So, we only have a couple notable tight ends on this team. And it will be interesting to see how they use tight ends. They said it's going to be a tight end heavy offense. In that case, we might have 2 starters at tight end. So let's start off with the first guy who I think is going to start. And really, we just have a bunch of mid players. I mean, we're talking middle of the road players at tight end right now. And I think Janarian Bonner is going to start. I don't know. It's going to be kind of a flex tight end position, but I think he's going to start. It'll be kind of a flex tight end, flex receiver, flex fullback kind of thing. But I expect Janarian Bonner to start in some capacity. it's just going to be kind of a flex position. I think it's going to be like fullback, but Junior Bonner, I'm kind of looking at our lads right here. They kind of have something similar. So I think Junior Bonner will start. But as for traditional tight end, you have a three-way battle here. Right? You have Thomas Fidone, who is, I don't think he's caught a pass his entire career. I could be wrong. I don't think he has. You have Arik Gilbert, the 5-star coming out of high school, somebody who was really, people said he was going to be generational. Has never produced. Yeah, he got run out of town everywhere he's went, and now he's here. And so hopefully he produces. He's an athletic freak though, but he had a bad spring game, dropped a lot of balls. And then you have Nate Borkacher, who honestly, I think is going to start. Man, I think it's going to be Nate Borkacher. But let's get into it. So Nate Borkacher has 6 receiving yards and 6 receptions and 50 receiving yards on his career. Only played last year, really. I guess he had 2 catches in 2021. But yeah, this guy's 6'5", 230 from Aurora, Nebraska. He was originally a walk-on. He's no longer a walk-on. But, he doesn't knock your socks off with anything he does. He's a really solid blocker, and you'd expect that with his size. Doesn't really present any threat through the passing game. But the reason why I think he's going to start is I think he fits the offense, and I think he's a proven commodity. And not to say that he's proven to be a good player, but he's proven because he's played. Thomas Fidone's never played. Arik Gilbert's never played. They're both really similar in that case. And I think, and the rule keeps talking about Nate Borkacher this, Nate Borkacher that. I think they gave his brother a scholarship too. Plays on the O-line. They like these boys, man. And I think this guy's going to be wide receiver or tight end 1. For better or worse, you might hate that. You might say, "Oh, Thomas Fidone this, Thomas Fidone that. He's going to be there." I think it's going to be Nate Borkacher. But yeah, nothing Nate Borkacher ever does really is impressive. But he just, he went through all the competition last year, and when Travis Vokalek was banged up, Nate Borkacher, stood up and he played really well for being a walk-on at least. So yeah, but let's get into Thomas Fidone. Oh, brother. I mean, oh gosh, I want to wonder. I wonder how I'm going to talk about Thomas Fidone here. Okay. So Thomas Fidone is 6'6", 240, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Huge recruit. The class of 2021, I believe. Long time, man. Long time ago. And really hyped up prospect. Been recruited by Georgia, Iowa, Bama, everywhere. And he's a guy who was kind of projected to play as a true freshman. We didn't really know. Then he blew it his ACL. Okay. Then he played like 2 games in 2021. Limited snaps, garbage time, never caught a ball. Going into 2022, kind of had some good expectations. Blew it his ACL again. It was a different ACL. So both of his ACLs are screwed. Didn't play at all in 2022. And I just find it hard to believe, roast me in the comment section, please. But I just find it hard to believe that this guy's going to be generational at this point in time with 2 blown out ACLs in 2 years. Do you know how rare that is for players to come back from that and go to the NFL and be, solid? Like, it's hard. And that's what he's being projected to be by some fans. I think Thomas Fidone, and I think it's time to be realistic about Thomas Fidone. He is a bust to a little bit, to a degree. And not to say that he's never going to be a productive player for us. That's not true. I think he's going to be productive for us this year. But I don't think he's ever going to be, day 1 NFL type of guy or day 2 NFL type of guy. I think at best, Thomas Fidone is going to be like a Travis Vokalek for us, right? Not bad. Goes undrafted in the NFL. Just a solid starter, nothing more. Never all Big Ten honors, but that's nothing wrong. Travis Vokalek was a heck of a player. At worst, Thomas Fidone could never be a starter here. That's worst case scenario. And that's if the injuries continue. I don't think that'll happen. I think Thomas Fidone will end up being a productive member, but he's never going to be generational. He's never going to be, a first round pick is what people continue to keep alluding to. I also didn't like, I like, let's talk about what Thomas Fidone does for good first. Really solid speed. And everything I'm saying right now is based off of high school because we haven't seen this dude play for 3 years. So really solid speed for a tight end. Great route runner. One of the things that he struggled with significantly in high school, basically the only thing he struggled with was blocking. He wasn't a great blocker, and that was something that Frost wanted to mold him to be. But really good route runner. Probably one of the biggest passing threats we've seen out of Iowa or Nebraska tight end wise from high school football. I think he ended, let's see what he ended with his last year of high school. Yeah, he had like 900 yards with like constant double teams and triple teams. Yeah, that sounds about accurate. I mean, I was watching a lot of those Lewis Central teams, man. He was a baller, but I can't. Well, it's time to be realistic about him. I think he's going to be tight end 2, and he's not going to be generational. So I know if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But let's get to the last guy who's going to be tight end 3. It's Arik Gilbert, 6'6", 260. Okay, this is a guy who's bounced around. He was a 5-star coming out of high school. Went to LSU, left LSU, went to Georgia, left Georgia. Man, now if this guy goes right, he could be a first rounder. He really could. And I'm a little bit more optimistic about Arik Gilbert than Thomas Fidone. And I understand they're very similar players. They're both, have largely have not produced. The only reason why I think Arik Gilbert has a higher chance of being a success is because I don't think he's ever been coached up right. And I don't think he's ever been, and not to say the coach he hasn't played for are good. He was coached under Kirby Smart, for crying out loud. However, I don't think he really took that coaching to heart, if you know what I mean. Some players don't respond well to certain types of coaching. I think Rule's really trying to keep him under his wing. The other thing that I think I like about Gilbert's never really got injured. He got injured at LSU, but he's never gotten injured this significantly like Thomas Fidone has. And I think Thomas Fidone, the reason he's not going to succeed is not a mindset issue. It's like he literally physically can't. And I think with Arik Gilbert, it is a mindset issue, but mindset issues can be fixed. But he was the 2019 Gatorade National Player of the Year. I mean, that's insane. And that he was the first tight end to ever win it. This dude was getting comparisons to Tony Gonzalez. They were talking about him being the best tight end prospect ever. Arik Gilbert's special, man. And everything he does is blows you away. He's a phenomenal blocker. He's the best speed at the tight end position at Nebraska. Really good route runner. Hands are not great. His hands are not great. You saw that in the spring game. He dropped a lot of balls. But I really like his ceiling. But I also think he has the lowest floor too. Because the mindset thing, and I talked about this with Xavier Betts, it can hurt you really bad. And Xavier Betts' floor was really low. It's either you fix your mindset issue and you can do whatever you want, right? Learn the playbook and your talent's going to take you to do the rest. Or the mindset issue is going to screw you over so bad that you leave the team and you get kicked off or you transfer. So for that reason, Arik Gilbert could be worse than Thomas Fidone and has a lower floor than Thomas Fidone. But he has a really high ceiling. Where will he end up? I think he'll just kind of be like Thomas Fidone. I think they just got 2 really middle of the road tight ends, and that's unfortunate. That's the unfortunate truth about it. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's not fun, because you see 2 talents, but both really are being held down, one by mindset, one by injuries, and I doubt they'll break free. Excuse me. But let's go to the rest of the tight end room. I'm trying to wrap this up real quick. I'm recording this at like 1 a.m., man. I need to get this video on Friday. John Goodwin, really like him. He's a walk-on. I just like him as a player, man. He's a nice guy. And he's a hard worker. Just kind of what you want from a walk-on tight end. He's never going to play for us, but really like him. Luke Lindenmeyer, walk-on. Braden Clover, walk-on. Chase Androff, interesting. I just don't know what to expect from Chase Androff in his career. So he's a redshirt freshman on scholarship from Minnesota. Great blocker. He's basically a glorified O lineman. If you ever watch Minnesota or Wisconsin high school football, it's running the ball 90% of the snaps. Like, I think this dude in his senior year of high school, let me see if they have it on this website. In his senior year of high school, he only caught like 5 catches, which is ridiculous. Okay, no, he had 10 catches for 200 yards his senior high school. And he's like, that's insane. You know, there are tight ends in Florida who have 1,000 yards receiving and they're not even a 3-star, you know. But that speaks to how good of a blocker he is. But definitely really unproven in every other aspect of being a tight end. So that's somebody I'm kind of worried about. Jake Applegate is a guy who started his career off here as as a linebacker. I hated when Frost did that. So Jake Applegate went to Southeast in Lincoln Southeast, and man, he was a great tight end. He was not as good on the defense side of the ball, and Frost, for whatever reason, put him at linebacker, and Rule got here and was like, no way, we're putting this guy where he belongs. So Jake Applegate, I like Jake Applegate. I think he's not going to play this year, but this is a guy in a couple of years he could really make some moves and crack the depth chart. And last one, Ishmael Smith-Flores, legacy from Texas, kind of came here with Bob Wager. We'll see if he does anything in his career here. 6'4", 230, kind of slim for a tight end, but hoping he provides some. I really didn't look at his film too much when he committed. He was kind of one of the later gets. But yeah, somebody to watch in his career. But overall, tight end room, it gets a D. I mean, it does, man. I the only reason why I'm not giving it an F, I think the tight end room is the worst from our team besides D-line, and we'll get to D-line in our next video about it. The only reason it doesn't get an F is because I think the three best, Nate Borkature, Fidone, and Arik Gilbert. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not walk on. But it's really bad because there's not a guy who I think in that room is better than a C+ player. And I don't think any of those guys are gonna, move the needle for us. I think it's a D, and I think at best case scenario, it could be an A. I mean, seriously, like that's how big the potential is for that room, right? Let's say Fidone hits and is in as good as advertised. There is a possibility. And let's say Arik Gilbert is. You have potentially the best dynamic duo in college football, right, at tight end. However, the odds of that happening are so low. It's a reality that can happen, but the odds are low, man. They really are. In worst case scenario, Fidone can't stay healthy like he hasn't been, right? Arik Gilbert gets kicked off the team or transfers in 1 year or 2, because same thing he's done throughout his career. And Nate Borkature's, just doing what Nate Borkature does, right? Like I trust Nate Borkature enough not to get injured. I'm a Nate Borkature fan, man. He does what he needs to do, shows up every day. The staff loves him. He's just one of those walk-on kids that does what he's supposed to do, man. And you can't blame him, but he doesn't have the potential. He's not going to be an NFL player, but you don't need. If he does what he needs to do and he shows up to practice, you don't need NFL players at their position. You just need solid players who are willing to do their best and put their best foot forward and get better. So, but yeah, I'm just going to give it a D, man. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments. If you're a little more, passionate or about Thomas Fidone specifically, I know I'm going to get a lot of comments about Thomas Fidone, and because this fan base loves him, and I do too. I don't think anything I said today was because I'm a hater, because I'm pessimistic. I just try to be honest or keep it real and be worried about my concerns. And I know a lot of people might, especially Nebraska, the Kool-Aid flows. So I don't want people to get mad at me and say, "Oh, you're so pessimistic." Like, no, I'm trying not to be. I try to keep it real. I try to keep it real and try to be honest, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But I try to, give these guys a fair breakdown, a fair reality. And if I'm wrong, especially about Thomas Fidone, if I'm wrong and he's really good, that's awesome. Or if I'm wrong and a player's really bad, that's not great. That looks bad on me. But yeah, But anyways, go Big Red, man. Really good episode talking about wide receivers and tight ends today. If you like the episode at all, please give it a like button. Or if you disagreed with me about anything, let me know in the comment section. But slap on a like too. It really helps me out. Or even subscribe. That'd be awesome, man. I'm trying to hit 300 subscribers, so that'd be great. Just trying to progress every single day. But as always, go Big Red. D-line video coming out soon. I also have a special video coming out this Saturday, so tomorrow. And you'll see that. Kind of a surprise, but please give that video specifically a like when it comes out. Put post notifications on too, man. Put those notifications on so you are notified when I do upload. But that's it. That's my spiel. Thank you for watching the video, and go Big Red, everybody.